Greetings to everyone out there. Welcome to Disturbed Oasis. It's our regular Wednesday night podcast. I believe this is going to be episode 23, and it's going to be rather lengthy, and it's going to be a really long video. But I wanted to film a preface to it, an introduction, so you understand what I'm about to show you. Yesterday, on October 21st, I went to a committee meeting that was called at 1 o'clock in the Board of Supervisors office by the Strategic Planning Committee, which is one of the committees within the Board of Supervisors. If you look at our website, www.halifactsoasis.com, Halifax, F-A-C-T-S, there's a link there under Government that has all of the contact information, meeting information. I'm still working on it. It's not complete, but it's getting there. So within that is a list of the Strategic Planning Committee members, and it's not accurate. I have an updated one, and I'm worried about posting it because, well, all it is names and titles. There's no emails, no phone numbers, nothing like that, no information. So hopefully this will be fine. Anyway, so I went to this meeting yesterday, and apparently this is the second time they've met. The first time they met, because think about it, for an entire county, a strategic plan is huge. It covers all the different aspects we want to improve or has challenges within this county. You know, it would cover all the ideas for progress, be it economic development, everything we talk about in all these interviews. You know, what are we going to do about poverty, homeless, recreation? So because it's such an overwhelming thing, and it has been felt that they haven't been given very good direction. In the one meeting they had, it was mentioned that they would focus on Edmonds Park. Edmonds Park has more property to be developed, so they want to do a big one comprehensive plan for it, which is so great. It's a great location, great ideas, so much could be done with it, a lot of potential. Okay, we all together on that bit? So it's been reported to me that the direction given to this committee was to put an announcement out to get what they call RPQs. There's two things. There's RPQs and there's RPGs. RPQs are a request for quotes. In other words, look at this job, what's it going to cost? Then there's something called an RPQ, which is a request for qualifications, and I believe that's what they were looking for. They made it public, they made an announcement, they had people send information to come and do a presentation. So then, and you will see, as soon as I finish talking and this video starts, I put two documents in between there. The first one is the call about this is a public forum, and we're going to have two people present information on how they're qualified to do this Edmonds Park project, which is a massive project within itself. And then they would take public feedback. Well, it turns out that the board did not advertise it on their website, so the public at large didn't have a notification of it. I only found out about it through one of my contacts. So I decided to attend. I didn't know that it hadn't been posted at this point. So when I looked around and didn't see any public members there to give any input, it was disappointing, to say the least. But moving on, they had two architectural engineering firms or landscape engineering firms that were doing a presentation. As I found out in the aftermath of this meeting, there were actually 5 people that expressed interest. I'm not exactly sure why all 5 weren't there presenting, but my understanding is that the direction of the board was for this committee to bring a couple people to the table so they could start looking at the scope of what this project is going to mean. Because it's big, it's really big, and you'll see all that when you see the presentations. It was really exciting and cool. Anyway, so as this meeting goes on, the two companies make their presentation, which were exciting. They showed some of their old work. That was cool. And towards the end of the second presenter business, someone asked them something about challenges in a project they had done in Danville. And he looked over to me where I was filming and he said, I don't know about saying things on camera. And that makes sense because obviously if there was a problem, let's say they had a contractor that fell through, they weren't counting on, or they didn't make a deadline with something because of some, they don't want to like out people out in public like that. Okay, I get it. He wanted to limit what he said. That's fine. And then after they wrapped it up and left, one of the members there, which was Matt Candlin, who is the town manager for South Boston, he spoke up and said, "Is this a closed session?" Then things started getting a little bit sticky. And this is where I really hope a lot of you watch this, because you're going to see where there's a lot of dysfunction in the leadership of this current Board of Supervisors. I was quite amazed at the process myself. I was just real quiet and did my little filming, but I wanted to give you this commentary so that you know what to look for and understand more of what this process was about. So after the whole camera thing was brought up, then everybody was talking about it, and the gist I got from this was that they felt that these discussions need to be held in closed session, which kind of flies in the face of everything that's being said lately with this board. But that's not the only takeaway, and that's not what my focus is. What I think they were trying to, the way I saw this, and I'm just a layman, don't take me as an expert, watch this and formulate your own opinion, but what it looked like to me was that some policy wasn't followed, that apparently all 5 people that bid on this should have made a presentation, or they should have gone into a closed session to discuss the 5 companies, to figure out how they wanted to be selective with them. But that's not what happened. So because the cameras became an issue and this was made public, there was some contention that the committee failed in protecting somewhat of a reputation because policy wasn't followed, or that it was exposed that policy wasn't followed and they didn't like that. So it came around to Mr. Claiborne, the chairman, saying to the two chairmen of this committee is Rylan Clark, who's with the Tachi, and Dietrich Easley, who's on the Planning and Zoning County Board. And the presentation to them was, and a lot of this came from Tamika Morgan. You'll hear her explaining that if this, then that. It was kind of one of those logical thought processes. In other words, if we're going to bring in the other 3 to do a presentation, as we should because they put in a submission for it, then the other 2 are going to have to resubmit, and basically it's going to be like starting all over again. Because initially she did not seem to understand how the direction had been given to the committee. I feel like I'm convoluting this a little bit. I don't mean to. I'm trying to really simplify it. So they had a meeting. The board gave the committee some directions. The committee followed the directions and did exactly what the board asked them to do by, having this public forum and picking these people and getting these requests for qualifications. But when it came to it and it was put on display for the public, because there were other people that didn't get involved as far as vendors for this project, that it was showing that something was not done correctly. And instead of just saying, okay, I feel like we need to go back to the drawing board and do this right, blame suddenly started becoming shifted onto the committee. So Claiborne kept saying, well, you didn't do anything wrong. We just have to follow policy. Well, why wasn't this instruction clear in the first meeting? That's what I don't get. And he kept telling Mr. Clark, don't get excited. You didn't do anything wrong. But it was clearly saying that this committee did not proceed in the correct manner when they simply did what they were instructed to do. I felt quite bad for the people on the committee, and I think that it was blame shifting by the board member, by the chairman of the board. And this new county manager, or county administrator, Mr. Braid, who hadn't even started yet, he's just, there observing. And it devolved into what I saw as committee members who are there working for the county for nothing, trying to help make projects come together, being chastised for not following policy that they were not directed to follow. They were directed to do what they did. And I think it was quite unprofessional. I disagree with Mr. Canlin that all these things should be in closed committee. He made the point that some of these companies may be sharing proprietary information that they don't want to be public, and that should be in closed session. I get that. I can agree. I understand and can, I get your point on that. I agree. However, and I think you also mentioned, I would have to go back and review the video again, but I think you also mentioned that once the plan's put into place, then go public with it. But don't you feel that the decision-making process on who you select should also be part of public comment? That's my question to Mr. Canlin. Anyway, I'm really glad I was there, and I hope when this reconvenes and does this again, that more of the public will show up to participate in this, because there's so many aspects of this that I'm just simply ignorant on. I'm having to ask a lot of questions, but I'm trying to bring you clear information so that you understand, because this was not a good meeting. I think the Strategic Planning Committee was sincere and faithful in what they tried to do, but I think the direction from Chairman Claiborne was not good, and then when it went awry, he shifted blame onto the committee, and that's just poor leadership, Mr. Claiborne. I feel like you need to answer for that, just like we've asked you to answer for many things. And you can, people can accuse me of being biased, or, I've been called lots of names. I've had people say ugly things to me. Go, bring it on. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I feel like what I am doing is a public service for you. This is your podcast. This is not a vanity project of mine. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it takes time. I don't make a dime off of it. Just like these committee members don't. All of us collectively are trying to help be part of the conversation and the progress that is Halifax County. So watch this and tell me what you think. Now, at the end of it, there's going to be an abrupt end, and I'm going to have some closing thoughts on that to explain it to you and what happened at that point. So anyway, here it is. This was yesterday's second Strategic Planning Committee that basically went awry, and now they're not even going to meet until January, because they're waiting on the new board to come in. There's going to be holidays. We have a new county administrator who needs to settle in. And so I think that's a great call that they're just going to basically start over in January. But I do hope it's going to be more than the Edmonds part. Because here's my question. There's about 20 committees under the board that he's appointed. Chairman Clayman has appointed. There's a recreation committee. Why aren't they handling this? Why is this under the strategic plan? Shouldn't all these committees handle each individual aspect, and then the strategic planning committee is the one that figures out how to bring it all together, how to juggle and manage it as far as funds and timing? I mean, I'm no expert, but that just makes perfect sense to me. What do you think? All right, I'm going to stop here, and then I'm going to give you the flyer that I got about announcing this, even though it was not put on the Board of Supervisors webpage, or I don't know if it was announced any other way. Maybe the chamber did, I don't know, but it's not really the chamber's job to do it. Although they do try to, help people interact and get information out. They're great for that. Then the second slide you're going to see is everyone who is in attendance and what their piece is. For example, when you have these committees, you just don't want somebody's friend on it. Obviously, you want somebody from tourism or recreation or zoning. So I think this committee is going in a good direction for that. There seem to be some very intelligent, responsible people on this committee. And also, please note when at the end, Mr. Clark, who is one of the chairs, he said something to the effect that, I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart, and I'm getting all this clap back for doing what you told me to do. I just felt right sorry for him. And I want to say, full transparency, I've known Mr. Clark for a while, and he has just one of the best hearts and done so much for this county that he's just golden. We need more people like him. He's, hey, You need to run for Board of Supervisors, Mr. Clark. Anyway, that's a side note. But I, I don't think it was right the way he was talked to and the way he was treated by Mr. Claiborne. But, tell me what you think. I'd love to hear some input on it. And I'll be back for the end notes.
Meeting or at the start. Second one, in our first meeting, and this first meeting, good conversation, to detail today. Thank you for going to in our first second meeting today as well. So today we have two companies to present to the community today. Field Studio, one site collaborative, and the second presented today. And we do know that we have other agencies who submitted RFPs to do. So we would give them the opportunity to have these two to present to this committee as well. So just to know, you will not make any decision today, any decision made today on any firm. These opportunities for everyone to, we will review our RFPs we have and we submit it, and we will allow them to present as well in our meeting. With that being said, we have Deal Studio prepared to start their presentation. We've given them roughly 15 minutes to present. Now, if they would like to have Q&A in between the presentation, but him to decide that before and the presentation. We'll give you a floor to you, sir, and floor is yours.
Sure. Is this a good spot for everybody right here? Okay. And then, I guess since you would throw out sure, or
Click or somewhere.
yeah, or you know,
But nevertheless, I can do that for them.
all right. Well, good to be here and meet you guys. Probably saw us talking with the competition. I'm I was schoolmates with Graham. He's a big guy, so we've known each other for a long time. I'm Greg Webster, director of landscape architecture at Home Studio. I've been working with Carl, Fax, Chris Laurie. Chris Laurie, landscape architect at Bill Studio, and her helping me part with the It's a really cool job. All right, so Greg Webster, Chris Laurie. We've got a few other people on our team that we would get engaged on the project. Amy Adams, she's a landscape designer. She also just recently got that ENV, which is behind her name, stands for envision, which is kind of like lead, but it's more for structure, sustainable infrastructure. Wes Schultz, he's a Virginia Tech grad in landscape architecture. And then Mike Leans, who's with Hurt Profit, would be our civil engineer consultant. A lot of times when we do master plans, the times like have civil engineers on board to come from building structure, transportation, things like that. So we're going through some project experience. We'll make this kind of quick. We know that you guys we have 15 minutes or so, but we wanted to put some relative projects show you all. And most of these are recent projects. This is Amherst County. We did their Parks and Rec master plan in the past couple of years, and so that was for the whole county. So they had maybe 10, 12 parks. So we went through the whole process as a county in terms of public engagements, design, stakeholder input workshops, and then went back to present our designs, get that vetted through, and then produce a final document that they could then use living documents to do work events 5, 10 years on parts. What you see up here is just one of two parts that we did. This one is probably close in size to what you guys have over on your property, but it involves multi-purpose fields, pickleball courts, basketball courts, playground, sliding pad, fun park, community garden, parking, and a small amphitheater station. Very all-inclusive community park. And another example in terms of scale, this was Monaco Park by the river, and this incorporated some of the Native American heritage in this park, storytelling, working in some Native private designs, and making this real, giving it an identity. That's one of our things. We like to tell a story through our projects, give identity. Um, it's not just here's a program and we throw it on the sheet. We like to give a story, have purpose, have intent to our project. This is another good one in terms of scale. Franklin County, Smith Farm Park, I said that way. And the county actually did the public engagement piece of this, and we gathered their data from that, their results and survey results, and then developed a master plan for this park. It was about 600 acres. You can see where I just stepped out lake down in the lower left there. But it involved using a historic farmstead there, using the historic building. They wanted this golf course, splash pads, dog park, walking bike trails, mountain bike trails. Um, and just a very robust program they have for this large piece of property. Elmwood Park, that's the more urban park that we've done. This is in downtown Roanoke, and it incorporates a large amphitheater with a stage, and it's got an art wall, and multiple kind of urban walkways through this park area. The interesting thing is this then, and it's been great to watch the evolution of how this is used for their time, how versatile it become. A couple months ago, they just had a mountain biking, it's like a state level or national level mountain biking town, Georgetown, that came through the park. And of course, as the landscape architects on the project, I went down to see it. I was like, oh my god, you guys, please take care of this. You need a mountain bikes all through your park, but you never anticipated. But it's fun kind of seeing that and how the activities can be. Taking the mark here. Oh, sure, yeah. Um, and it's got a splash pad there, and that's for an urban splash pad. So it doesn't have all the colors and all that ways and like that. It's this first one that when the water's down, it's used as more of a kind of a density platform. It also has part wall you can see there. There's the amphitheater. It seats about 4,500 people, but it's versatile in that's the maximum capacity, but it also is scalable for smaller events. And works that way. There's a full event down there in the lower right, and it's got ample space for vendor tents and festivals and wide walkways and stuff. It's been very successful. This project wrapped up last year. Christiansburg, Huckleberry Park. This is a pretty big park. It's got 4 multi-purpose fields. It's got a dog park. It's got a splash pad, multiple buildings, picnic pavilions, concessions, restrooms, and a large playground. And what's cool about the playground is that it's all inclusive. and multi-generational. So, if grandma and granddad bring their grandchildren there, you can do stuff there with kids. So, it's just very versatile in that sense. It's cool. There's a piece there in that orange arc that you can connect to it and you can play with somebody that might be overseas if you wanted to. Based on what's happening cabbage. It's really cool. There's a spray pad there that you see, and there's the fields. Those fields are artificial turf. Um, and so they're collegiate grade, and they're championship ready. See, so this is a very successful project as well. So on a smaller level, this is in Lynchburg. This is Jefferson Park. This little park got finished. Actually, this past 2 months ago, we had a ribbon cutting for it. But it's an evolving park. It can come in different phases, but it's got some basketball courts and playground games. They did space on top. There's some news on there in the basketball court. What they did there was pretty cool. Was they hired a zero artist to do the court. That's right. Benton Town Park. This has not been built, but they're seeking funding at this point. And that's another thing that we do is we help municipalities and clients go out and see get funding for schools or needs. This has all the things that what you would call word best. Like, in Franklin County Park, that's close to this one in scale, but includes a lot of multi-purpose field, out bike courses, you know. And then Halifax, so I'll let Chris talk about this one.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks, Gray. This project here is one that's really near and dear to my heart. And I think several people in this room, Carl, Denise, and Rylan. Nice to see you and meet you in person. We're really grateful that I got you provide the grant for this beautiful mural. And, this project had its share of hurdles to cross, but what seemed like issues and problems really turned into huge opportunities. So it's our hope and great talk about placemaking and experiential qualities of the work we do. We hope that this project has kind of become something that people in town feel is a shared space, meet space to meet and gather. So, kind of another example of our work process here. A lot of left to see what Greg's early sketches from a workshop. And then how that kind of translated into the final design through a lot of input back and forth with community, through the beautification committee, and everyone else involved. Yeah, so kind of going off that, our project approach, show you a few slides here about kind of the way we work. And first of all, it's the goals. This project, looking through that RFP, what were the overarching goals we really want to achieve in this project? So we just listed those straight off the RFP here. Vibrant, inclusive, multifunctional, recreational, cultural hub, collaborative with the community's vision. And we just want to add to that list, but make sure we achieve all those goals. So part of that, and just like we did with the little alley project, is going to be public engagement. And I guess the kind of scale and type of that might remain to be decided, but the goal with that type of thing is to make sure everybody's voices are heard. So maybe a combination of in-person workshops and meetings, stuff that might be circulated online, just to make sure all the age ranges and people have a chance to comment. So at the bottom right, you see kind of a graphic that gets kind of created from a system where certain elements that people request kind of come to the forefront, and it's easy to see filtered what people as a whole are kind of looking for, and then some of the tertiary comments around the edges there become important to look with overarching themes. So with that information into design, back and forth sometimes through all these parts of the process, but I like to do a lot of hand sketching and analysis diagrams as ways to help portray all the kind of complex information about each particular site and the uses on it. And then this slide at the bottom, we love getting together where people put post notes on plans and really in person and then collaborative, co-creating atmosphere as well. So, like Greg said, a lot of what we do is not just the large scale programming, but once all that's kind of delineated, what's really important is the placement. These are the details, the spaces. I really encourage people to come back, feel like it's a iconic place of growth power character. So it's these smart great sketches here and how they translate into the final image there. I just love looking at those side by side. And then, top right, kind of showing some detail design too that really helps create that sense of place. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do all those skills of design on this project. So now about this particular project, just a few slides. Of course, we didn't spend a whole lot of time getting into design yet, but I'll show you a few slides at the end. We, being designers, we can't resist just kind of playing that role first. But we've got a lot to learn before we get to that stage. So did a little quick overlay here from GIS showing not just the site that was highlighted on the RFP, but really interested in the adjacent properties, topography, all the things that we'll really study a lot closer later on. What was really jumped out at me was all the adjacent properties. Most of them seem to be owned by Halifax County. I'm not sure about that dairy farm that's right in the middle of the site. It looks like that's on its way of kind of being taken down. Maybe just the silos are going to be left. I'm not sure.
It's all right. It's all right again.
Yeah, so that's great. We were looking at the site, thinking about we got Edmonds Park, we got the new site, dairy farm in between. Should we be thinking about it as one site altogether? So this is some of Ryland's beautiful drone footage here. I mean, it's just the kind of thing that you can have access to this data on every project. It would just make it a better project. Thank you for that. So, about getting into some of what our methodology on this particular site might be, along with the site analysis, some market research about what kinds of uses, attractions, and activity in multiple regions come into place. Of course, the collaboration, community engagement is really important. Conceptual design that we come up with after that collaborative process, and then circulate that design back to the community to make sure we check all the boxes that they requested as much as we can. And then at that point, once we have kind of a good working conceptual design, we like to do overall construction costs because that helps us really narrow out what phases may be feasible and make sense in construction sequence. So we kind of be proposing maybe two scopes. RFB had mentioned maybe going into construction drawings with this job. I think it might be important to think about the costs and phasing first. Of course, we could come up with a design, detail the whole thing to the end, but sometimes it's helpful to break it into two phases like this. But, so kind of getting back to the site, this Edmonds part, it looks like, I don't know how much of this is actually going to be under construction anytime soon, or maybe this is just conceptual, but we want to make sure that we are aware of what's coming. So some of the questions I had were this road that's coming into the new visitor center. That would be something if we wanted to keep a clear connection to our new site. I just want to continue on through so that we get direct linkage. And some of the event spaces in here, we were wondering how those might be either similar uses or different scales to the events that you see happening on our new site. So a lot of questions there. Maybe some of these uses would move to the new site. Maybe a chance to kind of remake the entire continuous sequence of parcels.
Are you filming the main access road coming out of the road?
Yes. Yeah. Looks like now it's kind of a gravel road that connects on through. It looks like this plan, you were maybe closing it off. It's just kind of a dead end to the visitor center parking lot.
Shouldn't miss all the way.
Okay. So that's kind of already answered some of our questions here, but um, I like to look at access on these kind of master plans first because that's really the guiding factor, getting people there safely. So depending where we bring in access to the site, might need to coordinate with VDOT. There's new turning lanes off the main road there. Uh, maybe not stop lights, maybe just turn lanes. Definitely some coordination there. I've already answered a few questions about the plans for adjacent land. There was one larger parcel that looked like it may be really great for some really interesting kind of niche residential. Maybe what you think about as a park front community. I mean, something like that could be even really high density housing plan for some of these new young professionals that are going to be moving into the area. Just thinking about some of the news I read about the $1 billion Ikachi uh, capital improvement project and 100 homes going into the area and maybe 800 jobs. So might have a lot of young professionals looking for a really interesting, fun place to live, kind of a upscale, healthy community. What better place to live than on a park, right? So that's kind of exciting. So here's some of Brown's work again here. I like this view. Kind of gives you a great shot at Edmonds' existing park and our new site there. So we know kind of the play fields are going to be an important part of this. So like I said, we can't resist doing some preliminary sketching. So see kind of just rubbed in how it might fit two, might even be able to fit 3 soccer fields in that little central area without doing a whole lot of grading or earthwork. Top middle there, you can see 2 green rectangles. Those are about the size of soccer fields. Then the next slide might be kind of off the deep end. Like I said, we have to get to just have fun at this point before we really know all the considerations. So from that point, start to think about where we might bring in access, where we might bring connections to that existing park, how we might start to kind of lay out the land, different areas, different things. At this point, the circles are just diagrammatical. It could be splash pad, playground. The area down by the existing ponds might be more of an environmental area, hiking trails, maybe pollinator gardens, more kind of passive play down there. The stars are really interesting. Thinking those are focal points where you might come in, and that could be the real central hub, maybe that red star area. And maybe the blue star could be more pavilion or restroom area, more central to the play fields. But maybe some light commercial, a destination restaurant could be really fun in this as a supportive feature to this park, especially if we're thinking maybe some new residential. This could be way off, but that yellow rectangle at the bottom could be a prime spot for some, I don't want to say townhouses, could be little cottage courts, but I think this area would be really conducive to some higher density housing. Not high rises or anything, of course, have to be fitting with the character. But with all the new jobs and interest coming into the region and this huge new park, this seems like a great place. You imagine Airbnbs, if you have a big event, you can rent out a really nice place to stay instead of bringing a camper. So that kind of sums up everything. Go back through any slides or if y'all have any questions.
You're right out one. Okay, it's very bullet. How today is not that long.
That's about
68. You got 4 walkie.
yeah, just like the fire feed is not just like say
You get more in the splash there.
Yeah, Slash Head, we had the Key Radio. What you saw there was about a $1 million week. Where Splash Head. And with Splash Head, you got to talk about it. Yeah, that's
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience, potential experience with funding in the aspect? Maybe some of your successes with funding different projects you've worked on.
oh gosh, it seems like we do that for most projects, Um, we're all in a region in Southwest Virginia. It's a constant thing you just have to search and do. So then we're vested in these types of projects. So we can help get the funding for them. It means we can help do the project. Um, but David Hill in our office is the funding guru. So we will put him to work and he will go out and search a lot of these things. We get stuff from the DCR, Q, Lead Item as usual. And then with what's that Huckleberry Farm, Pittsburgh, we used fund from playground manufacturer that inserted to dollars that came off. So I mean, there's creative ways where we go out, we search and hunt down, or just there's you do this.
Do you see any challenges with photography on our side?
Um, Not as much as I'm usually uh, dealing with. You guys are somewhat flat and just gracefully hilly. So I look at your site and see that you've got a lot of opportunity. There's not a lot of fill out condition. So what we have to be really concerned about is the environmental impacts. When you start to put roads in, start to do grading for fields, uh, you got two water bodies there. I'm assuming those may be classified as well at this point. I'm not sure where they fall. That's something. Uh, those things all laid over.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your community engagement and public input facilitation? What does that look like for some of these projects?
Yeah. And they vary. But our strategy has been to engage with the stakeholders. They could be a group of you all, your committee for the park. It could be stakeholders that are from multiple areas of the county, sports organizations, um, uh, county administration, and so. Um, And so what we would do is work with you all as a client to determine who the stakeholders are, and then we target those. And could be a big workshop, could be a 2 day or 3 day workshop. It could be uh, small focus groups that have set times. Um, I noticed that you guys had done a survey already. Feedback, so that's very helpful. We've done, we've used apps, online apps, Maptioneer we use for Amherst. Uh, and that actually ended up being a pilot project for the app company. Um, but it allowed us to consolidate a lot of that data and put it out in an organized way, use it in a very user friendly way. I come to get data to sort of see how that makes sense. But
How do you think it would work? What process do you think would work best for this project?
for this project, um, because you have, I think, the fairgrounds and speedway there, and you're kind of countywide. We've had a ton of success in going to like local festivals, setting up a tent, and just putting that can be the most cool that way. When you set up a like an appointment time for a workshop, you don't see as many coming out. Yeah, I think it'd be great every month. So we found that the festival where they are there at Speedway, Fairgrounds, we get a lot of feedback. That's in conjunction with still the state one groups, you all that we put in them.
Here's the Elmhurst project a couple of different times.
Yeah.
Mentioned it's all inclusive and similar to the layout. And can you elaborate a little more on the Elmhurst project? How the components there might fit our project?
Yeah. So that particular that was called Cool Farm. I don't know if you guys with that. But it was an existing piece of property that had some feet into put heroin.
See if they're already
Yeah, right there. So you can see in the upper left, there's already a framework, some function. So you wanted to make this more vibrant. And this is kind of help from talent. So it had to attract people to make bigger. So we wanted to make it and improve a lot of it. First floor, that's why these people was the dog park. It's got cult factory here, community garden. Of course, the sports field in the center. The next year, and so that lower area, one biggest things out in that area is Central Pavilion, a spike pad, right? Playground. I'm sorry, flashback to the left, playground to the right. To basketball, to pickleball, sod. So you have this highly organized area where you get to kids there, what that group what guys, these are kids, but you want it so that they have something to do their advantage. Um, so, and then just walkways and connecting all these things together, um, make that connective tissue strong. And now you mentioned inclusivity. Now that's something we're starting or we've been doing. That's kind of here. Christopher part of that. That's where you say you have a kid with autism and provide the play equipment for that need. You got to understand this. In the very they stimulus take a huge or take a huge effect on somebody else. So you got to make sure that we provide those play equipment. That will years. And it goes down to the backwards, yeah, darkness, something I forgot. There's something in there you need to provide. Well, but it's taking into account all these.
So I assume if we went with you guys, the person we would be seeing is Chris, right? You'd be the project manager?
Yeah.
And then
the day to day.
right. And then who else would we like if we had a public workshop or we had people come in, who would we actually see at that public workshop?
Well, I would definitely be there.
So one thing about our firm is we're multidisciplinary. So we have urban planners, equipment based. So we Chris would be their project manager. I would probably attend this Sire Chris agreements out as well. We'd probably bring in architect. We had some architectural elements part of this project.
I mean, what kind of programs or footage is needed? And then, And then early in the stage, in the public engagement, in terms of facilitation, he probably was very slight or play first and that kind of.
I don't remember from the pro. Do you guys have in-house engineering, or do you partner with an engineering firm?
We partner out and we listed certain problems and they get access. So nails that transportation. Cool.
I guess last question. So that public engagement, that happened since we done the survey. That engagement happened after separate plan in place.
Before it's kind of the first information data. There is a public agencies have to force for the public to see the results of what we created. It's what we heard.
Is there any other questions for anybody else from the group? The better understanding. Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate you. I think we have one more, and then I think a couple more. We have to review the RFPs, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to you. I don't know, a couple of or something.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll let you bring that. We're done.
And we have a copy of your presentation, so we can send that out to the group.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for the
Yeah. Thank you.
Great job.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Oh yeah. I can go say more. You might start arguing. If not, just one of these. So you said I know. Yeah, but if you got go to a list. Oh, you can start on see, but yeah.
Okay, so the clicker right there. So what we've been doing is kind of give 15 minutes for you guys to do a presentation and minutes afterwards for you guys to ask, or the team to ask questions.
So Rob, he has a. That's okay. Don't sweat it. We're good. We're good. So yep. I'm thinking an issue.
Committee chair said that they're going to distribute the presentation. So if there is,
There's if you just use the one. Yeah. And the names don't go with people, right? No. Today you're John, and everybody. That's just right. It's not that many kids. Yeah. Is this how you guys normally meet? It's awesome. No, thank you for Graham Smith, Site Collaborative Landscape Architects. And we are based in Raleigh, North Carolina. Been practicing for myself about 30 years. Jokingly, I mentioned there's some solid interaction with Greg Webster. At one point, he was a classmate of mine. So we just interviewed and we spent summer together. Really, stories will be hidden in the vault and we'll talk about. But happy to be here and kind of show you some of our work.
Hi, I'm Jose Rodriguez. I'm principal and landscape architect with Site Collaborative. I have about 20 years of professional experience. Been working with Site Collaborative the last 3 years, but worked previously at another firm for about 7 years. And obviously very excited for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you all very much.
Well, we have the outline of what we're going to talk about. You guys have, what we don't want to do is overstate what you already have in the written document. So we sent in the original request. So hopefully we're giving you a little more information than we did before. Yet some of it may be familiar. With that, want to talk a little bit about the team and as landscape architects and as a small firm. We oftentimes partner with other small firms. So small business owners, small firms, very nimble people that are able to respond, but people also that it matters to, right? So we're not passing time off to others. When you call the civil engineer, we're getting the guy who owns the company and the guy who has 29 years of experience, right? So that's kind of the way everything was set up with everybody from civil engineering. He also has a family farm. He married into a family farm about 10 miles from here. So the Wilkins family, some stuff. He comes up here quite a bit with her family. But in general, the consultant team is out of Raleigh, and we'll kind of explain why that is. That team has been building a lot of work in Virginia and Southern Virginia lately, and worked for the past 15 years in Danville. We do have an aquatics consultant out of Norfolk and then a geotechnical consultant out of Danville. So, but with that, we have a team that is built to cover any kind of as the scope evolves. Early on, the master planning team most likely would be focused on the landscape architecture, the architecture, and the civil. So, as Jose somewhat alluded to, we've been around, the firm's been around for 8.5 years. Right before we formed, Jose left and moved to California for 5.5 years, but thankfully he's come back. So, and before that, though, we were DHM Design. We were a branch office of a company that was based in Denver, Colorado. So, for roughly the last 15 or 16 years, we've been somewhat the same group of people. But yeah, at one time we were under a corporate umbrella. In the last 8.5 years, we've been on our own. We are a small firm of 7 professionals plus 2 contract employees. So once again, very nimble, and very focused on the work we do. We don't pursue work. While we have to take work that pays the bills, sometimes we do, have the opportunity to pursue work that meets our passions as well, given that we're a small business. We do focus on the central part of Virginia and North Carolina. I'm a Virginia native, Chesapeake, went to Virginia Tech, original licensure in Virginia in 1998. So I've been licensed in Virginia for a long time. And our core work is in the Piedmont kind of landscape in which we live in. We definitely done, because I did spend some time out west, done some parks out west, as I spent some time in Florida. So we've got some park experience across the country. We also do like to brag a little bit about our long-term relationships with Town of Cary, City of Raleigh, Wake County, and City of Danville. And so those aren't on-call contracts. Those are long-term relationships where we, because we've been able to build relationships. At the end of the day, it's with people, right? So hopefully that's the greatest kind of marketing and business development we can do, is by doing a good project and doing it well. And so that you would think, okay, wow, we should think about them the next time. So it's been really rewarding. Been working with the City of Danville for nearly 15 years. We do get parks built. So while we have fun doing the design stuff, we build parks. And that's the really exciting part, is to see people in our parks and see people out there enjoying them. We have 5 parks and small places, public spaces. Open in 2024, we have 2 parks under construction. We'll have a few more next year. A little bit of a lull right now, but talk about that from a construction standpoint. Current workload is about 70% public projects. So that's intentional that we have public and private. Our passion is public. We do the private so that there's a little different pace to those. We can learn certain municipalities as well. But there's a different, sometimes with the public stuff, the schedule gets stretched out a different way. There's different decision-making processes. The private stuff is more of a time-sensitive approach. And so there's a different way to build the cash model in the businesses. So we do load in some of those private jobs, as well. When we talk about some of our work in the park master planning realm, understanding or thinking that may be such a critical component early on, recently wrapped up and was approved by council unanimously in Burlington. 90-acre
renovation of a 90-acre park. It's been around for about 100 years, but it's kind of been a park that's done everything. It has every element of park infrastructure in it, all fields and dog parks and all sorts of things, but also has major floodplain issues and major infrastructure challenges. And then especially they want to do special events and focus on special events. So we took a ball field out and kind of proposed a community lawn and a large central space, because they're starting to host their July 4th events there and stuff like that. So converting that over. So it's been a fun process going through that with the city of Burlington. Wooden Meadow Park, a 21-acre park and 70% floodplain. So kind of a very passive, low key, small construction budget, hopefully with some very nice details. Carpenter Park, similar, 20 acres in Cary, and rebuilt a farm pond, built that as kind of a passive walkway, built some other elements to the park, but focused on the agrarian landscape in Cary. Some of you may laugh at that if you've been to Cary. But Western Cary does have a culture and a history of agrarian landscapes. The Aurora Sports Park also done massive sports parks, so 220 acres, large competition-only facilities. So there are a variety of master planning scopes in our history. The idea of creating cultural hubs. We are not showing you buildings. We can certainly do that if we need to. And we do have Catherine Hogan Architects, who does amazing architecture, small building architecture, but also handles, $50 million schools and large community spaces. So Catherine and Benny are really great and creative, but also technically sound. And so they've been a great partner for us. But what we're showing you here are parks that are cultural hubs. The Riverfront Park, the 4-acre park downtown, may be completed sometime soon. It's still under construction. You're seeing the splash pad there, an urban splash pad, kind of a funky plaza, but it's going to have lights and sounds and all kinds of things. So it's not the colorful, playful playground splash pad. This is built to be an urban park. Right adjacent to that is the Whitewater Park and the White Mill renovation, that Dan River Falls renovation. So that is going to bid soon. So you'll see that on the streets. That's a gravity-fed whitewater channel, urban whitewater channel adjacent to the Riverfront Park. That's going to be very exciting. Pullen Arts Center renovation, Raleigh's oldest park, like 1887, the deed. And then the Art Center is kind of this part of this triumvirate of arts buildings owned by NC State and the city of Raleigh. So creating a landscape and kind of to nestle things back into that park. And then a small intervention recently at Flowers Cottage at Dix Park. Right, so that's massive 300-acre park at the old Dorothea Dix Health Campus in Raleigh, and it's now a city park. But this is a small little intervention to bring actually food and beverage service. So thinking differently, and how does that work within a public landscape? Intergenerational play. There is talk in the survey about playgrounds, and I know you guys have some play experiences nearby, but at Fort Dix Park built their massive 18-acre playground. This Sassafras All Children's Playground at 2.5 acres was Raleigh's largest playground. It was built for universal design, side-by-side play. So not just median code, but kids with all abilities and all challenges could play with their friends. And so it's a physical and emotional. There's some resting spots and some things like that that were designed into that with some topography. Kiwanis Park, a small little intervention in a floodplain, again, in Raleigh. And then Lazy Days Playground at Mon Park is kind of native landscape thing tucked in a pocket inside an existing park here. Splash pads. There's talk about splash pads in the possible scope and or community survey. 3 splash pads have recently opened in Danville. Dylan Thomas blends to, I'd say, definitely disconnected parts of the neighborhoods at the former Green Street Park called Old Thomas Park. So that pulls some things together with some historical character, some of the detailing. Balloon Park is the park that's the big old park, 80 acres, but close to the casino. So they wanted something a little flashier, a little brighter. That's twice as large as their lift splash pad, so you'll see the scale of that's a little different. That's right out of Main and West Main Street. Then Third Avenue splash pad was taking some old tennis courts that had not been used for a while, converting those to a splash pad. All of those we designed those with our aquatics consultant, Doug from Norfolk, Virginia. When I started my career, I worked for Delegate, so that's kind of been, and he wrote a book back in the 90s sometime on full construction. So he's one of the gurus sitting right here in Virginia. So it's great to have him as a resource. With that, I'll wrap up my little bit. I just want to talk. We talked in the response about our process. We tried to simplify it, the idea of how we start by listening, and we kind of go through this whole analysis design phase. In a lot of ways, this diagram shortens the construction documents and the building and things like that, but we expand. The key is the part master planning or schematic design is so important because it sets the ground rules, it sets things right, it gets all the will of the community. So hopefully by the time we get into that document process, it's a little bit of nuts and bolts, making sure the technical details are right, the budget's right, schedule's tight, everything's good. But we want to make sure that early on, part master plan is kind of open forum into our discussion. Make sure that we're getting a lot of inputs and we're going back and forth on priorities, things like that. So, I'll let Jose jump in.
Go to the next slide here. So what you see here is, we'll say it's a loose schedule, more to kind of get a general idea for the time frame of the project as we see it. From reading the RFQ, I would probably break this down into almost like 3 phases. Where the first phase is essentially your part master plan, which includes site analysis and assessment, understanding the on-site conditions, concept design and ideation, and lastly, community engagement. The ultimate goal is obviously to have a master plan that will guide development moving forward, and to have a phasing plan, basically to help us strategize the implementation of said master plan. We foresee that being roughly a 5-month period. That's highly dependent on how rigorous the community engagement portion of that is. From that, we move on to construction documentation permitting. That's a bit more, I would say, standard. Whether we break that down into 30%, 60%, 90% CDs, or 25, 50%, 75% CDs. That's something that we'll need to discuss. But the idea is that there's a set of deliverables at every certain period of time, and hopefully we're also including some cost estimation to ensure that we're staying within a specified budget. In terms of permitting, we're assuming that permitting can run concurrently with CDs, and from the little bit of research we've done, we'll have to engage the town of South Boston, the county itself, and potentially VDOT. As I understand, I believe the town handles site plan permits and zoning permits, while the county handles building permits and potentially utilities. And depending on where we're going to access the site, we may have to engage VDOT for any driveway access. Once construction documentation and permitting are done, even though not specifically, specified in the RFQ, bid award and construction administration is something that we've done and can do really well. This next slide is, you'll certainly recognize it's a context map, but just to kind of get us all on the same page and make sure that we're looking at the right parcel there. It's the parcel that's sort of in that teal color, surrounded by that dashed line. It's located northeast of downtown South Boston, and directly to the north is Edmonds Park. And down at the south and directly across from Highway 360, we find the South Boston Speedway and the fairgrounds, which I guess, as I understand from reading a few articles, that potentially there's going to be some redevelopment happening at the fairgrounds, and maybe some of those uses that have in there now will move on to what is now the Halifax County Event Center. Other than that, the adjacent parcels are essentially all zone R1, which is a low density residential. And as we zero in on the parcel itself, some of the information we're showing here, I haven't had an opportunity to actually visit the site, But this is from mostly GIS information and what I can glean from, from aerial views and street views. Like every project, there's lots of opportunities and lots of constraints. These are just some of the initial ones that, we're able to kind of pick up. In terms of constraints, there's existing utility, transmission lines that, run right across, Highway 360. Those are those kind of little circles with the dashed lines. And then there's also a line that bisects the park, from, north to south. So those will certainly have, probably a 50-foot easement, that limit what you can and cannot do within that easement. Also bounding the west side of the parcel is a creek that I would also assume probably has some sort of environmental buffer, very likely also 50 feet. That also limits what you can do. Additionally, the topography, there's a good amount of topo here. There's about 20 feet of grade change from the lowest spot to the high spot. And so we'll have to be very strategic where we place a lot of these programmatic elements, like they'll leave one up, be cognizant of, placing them in places that are not going to be too costly. But with that, there's also some opportunities. One of the main ones is, at least I think, it's the agricultural character of the park itself. As you can see from the one bubble image there, you've got sort of these almost like a wildflower meadow with this dotted by these sort of larger vegetation throughout the park. There's also a little bit of borrowed scenery. Like right in the back, you can see the green silos from the Edmonds Dairy Farm. I think that's a huge opportunity for just wayfinding. You can see that it seems from a lot of places within the park. And so that allows you to, know where you are at any point within the park. The topography, even though it was a constraint, it's also a big opportunity because I would say a flat site is a fairly boring site. So the topo, you can see having some nice meandering paths within the site that create some nice edge conditions. It also provides different ecological niches to build. So it just adds a lot more interest to the park in general. And lastly, the proximity to downtown Boston itself is a big opportunity just for the amount of users that could be attracted to it. And you have to say Edmonds Park, which is already developed on the north side, so you already have this kind of connection. With that, I'll pass it back over to Graham here.
Yeah, just in closing, just kind of want to wrap up the idea that, and remind you that we've selected this team specifically, Virginia licensed, even though they're based in North Carolina, licensed in Virginia to do work, have done work, grounded engineering, our civil engineering partner. As I noted, he has some family nearby, but did most of our work with us in Danville. Catherine Hogan has recently done a project in Clarksville. So, and Doug is based in Norfolk, and the rest of this team has done all of our work.
That's swimming pool is for ADA. So they in fact the same splash pads. I know you mentioned the one in Blue Park and Danville. So what ADA requirement was you require from me for splash pad?
There was nothing special for ADA. And besides just the local and state building code, there was nothing that we ran into that was ever questioned. Ultimately, those were both approved from a building code standpoint by the city staff and then by the county health department. So the county health department gets into a discussion more about the splash pads and whether showers are needed and stuff like that, and the bathrooms were, once we put bathrooms in, we decided to put, bathroom facilities, they had to be ADA accessible. But nothing else came up to a point where it was questioned.
But yeah, public utility would have to properly for all the public utility. They even they of it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they license swimming pools and splash pads. They will do that review. That's how we were. Although we never had any problems with Pittsburgh County, they blessed all three with like 2 comments out of all 3 projects. So yeah, we have with the Riverfront Park. There is an enclosed. That's a giant splash pad, but in an urban way. It's like I say, it's a little different. there's a giant equipment room. So they've had to come in and inspect the equipment room, but not for ADA access. So just from a code standpoint.
Are there other questions I want to be my update?
And back to the ADA, we did make sure that, you know, all the ramps going in and all the slopes coming in. So everything was set up with those flash badges, university design, essentially, so that we didn't want impediments to people coming into the space. So
they were designed for wheelchair access.
absolutely. Yeah. And then so that means, you know, there's parking spaces nearby, there's access directly, you know, a direct route. Everything's under 5%. So we didn't do any yeah, we didn't do any 2% cross and or but even I think we only had some walkways, like we had some 5% coming in I think at Noah Thomas. But we didn't do ramps with rails on it, you know what I'm saying? It was all slope walkways versus ramps. So we did not want it at all to feel like it was a barrier.
Yeah. It's not like pools. You might have two different.
Yeah.
Oh, a chair lift.
The chair lift, yeah, you do not have to. No, yeah, that's at least we have not run it.
So if you don't mind, could you send the latest presentation to Dietrich? He has both of them, and he's okay. So he can, if you don't mind, send that out to the group to review. So appreciate you coming. And you know, hopefully the next couple of months we'll really give some feedback. I know we have a little discussion on a couple other RFPs that came in, but
Okay.
appreciate it.
Okay. And let's say reach out with more questions. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, we love to work together. So
Thank you all.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
So the next part of the agenda was the county did send out an RFP for others. We were able to receive RFPs from 3 other companies: Timmons, IMEG, CHA Consulting, and so I think the next. Yeah. And so the discussion now is, I think the next steps is, you know, if we have all had a chance to review those, we don't have to, from my understanding, we don't have to bring everybody in that applies to the RFP. Were there, from the other 3 that submitted RFPs, are there others that you would like to hear from in the similar format to bring in on another day and hear the same kind of discussion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
About other RFPs. Because at our last meeting, we had said that all RFPs had to be in the next. So did we solicit these other RFPs or were they submitted late?
So what we done, we went back and get the RFP by the policy.
Okay.
So we did not advertise properly
Okay.
first time. So we went back and put a new ad out on our website and did it by the county policy.
Okay. So that's why we have these other.
New companies to submit new RFPs.
Okay.
In my opinion, we should allow these same companies opportunities to come and speak if they choose to, as we gave these 2 to them.
I think the discussion around it was this was professional services, and I think Ms. Morgan brought that up. So, you know, we kind of went over and beyond, said you don't have to do RFP. We felt like it was the right thing to do to make sure everybody is doing it. So that's why we had the additional 3 that came in. And so if you all wanted to, you know, if you had any feedback on those RFPs, would you like to pick another day we bring in the others, or what were your thoughts on some of the others?
I think it's more than her.
Okay, you have, yeah.
Yes. So did the first 2 resubmit for when we resolicited?
These 2?
Yeah.
For today? Good check. I think they did. I'll check. Let's see.
So we would have to have them. They would have had to resubmit. That was one of the things that we discussed when we were here the last time. If we were going to solicit responses by a specific date, in order for them to even be considered, they would have to provide something in addition to whatever they had provided you on October 1st, because that would no longer be something that we could consider if that's the case. And that's just a law procurement.
I'm not sure.
We have to check whether they submitted.
We're gonna have okay. Um, this case that both say we have to drive with the law and finish this out every morning. And if we don't, then we would have that's so state and board of security. Okay. So these people may have to come back. Uh, um, after the plan. I think they should know what to tell.
And I also do have a question in regards to the presentation format. For the first presenter, they made note of a lot of things that you, Rylan, were able to provide for them. And so that may not be something that we want to highlight as much because it seemed like the second firm had the ability and access to the same things.
Yeah, so when I went over to the part that took drone photos, it was provided to everybody. Every firm had the same links, and every firm was sent the same documents. So I have no relationship with this group. I sent it to every group that every RFP. It was even in the email for the RFP that we sent out that the links and images were there.
Okay.
And so can you explain more about? I know last time you talked about professional services versus like if you're trying to build something, doing the procurement processes. Can you explain more about that last time?
So in regards to what you all had posted, you posted a request for qualifications. So that is just whomever can share whatever their qualifications are and say, and then we choose from that, not necessarily choosing from cost perspective or things of that sort. And you can do that because it is professional services. However, this solicitation ended October 1st. So if we were to put another solicitation out, it makes this first one null and void. So anyone that submitted, we can't consider them unless they resubmit. So that was my request the last time. If we're going to put it back out, then whomever may have responded to this request for qualifications, if they would need to resubmit for the next one. So that's why I said it would have to be sent to everyone. Whoever you send it to, as well as if we were going to put it on EVA, put it on a newspaper, they would still have to provide that information.
So I'm just more moving forward. If we would even consider one or two today, we would have to re-advertise. Yeah.
That's correct. And start all over.
So if we consider one or two today.
That's correct. Okay. So when we're talking about professional services, you can procure services based on qualification and not costs. But that's where the line is drawn when it comes to professional services. You still have to provide it in an equitable format for all individuals, meaning, we had to put it out for 14 days. We had to allow for whomever, whether we sent it out to them or they came looking for us.
So that being said, what are we going to do?
That being said, we would need confirmation on whether or not those two submitted their proposal for the second submittal or not. If they did not, they cannot be considered. So at this time, you would have to consider from the three that you have. And then if the committee decides that they don't want to do anything with the three, then you can go back out and request again. But you have to consider the ones that you currently have.
Based on what they've done, I would like to hear. I'd like some parts they share that were compared. I mean, I just think to do it.
I agree. I liked the proposal that was in. I think it'd be really good to hear from those other groups also, just to see how they all stack up. I think you can't be too careful on picking the right group. And I think picking the right group is going to be crucial to this project being successful or not. And I think from here, just hearing today, you could hear the different strengths of the different groups. And I think that all kind of went through my mind. And some of the things that were brought up, I honestly didn't even think about for the departments. I think the more we could hear from that, it would be, would it just helps with our recommendation, I guess. So with that, just to make sure that they're all fair, why don't we just send everything out again, and just that way we make sure we're checking all the boxes. 'Cause I want to make sure that everybody feels good about it, and then
Because I don't want to backtrack. I don't want to listen to these three and just come in. And then so we like the studio.
that's right.
And then we have to go back
That's
and
right. Do it again.
advertise. So to me, we'd be backtrack. Yeah, to me, it makes sense to go ahead and re-advertise it for the RFPs, I guess, not Qs, the RFPs.
No, you want RFQs. You want to know the qualifications, I would imagine.
To me, it makes sense to re-advertise. Get these to resubmit by deadline. And we're vertically test, right? It'd be okay. Well, let's do the next three, or may have more want to even submit. How's that?
Are we in closed session right now?
No.
Okay.
No,
Do you
they get nervous about it.
and so I'm okay with that. I mean, I think the county did put out the RFQ, I guess, recently. We can resend it out again and make sure, and we can, if it's okay, I don't want to break any law. I do think it'd be nice if we tell these two, hey, you need to resubmit, just so they know. Versus, they're not going to know.
I think that's the main way to do it.
Yeah, sure. So if we do that, I mean, when do you want the new due date to be for that?
Can I make a suggestion? And I would, I'm not disagreeing with Tamika, and you might want to consult with your attorney, of course. I'm not so sure this is the greatest venue and to have these people come in and speak in front of a camera to the public. These guys are competing with each other. And this is professional services, which means you don't have to do anything. It's like when you're hiring a lawyer. You can hire him based on those skill sets that you think are important for Halifax County. This is not a bidding process like other bidding processes. So I would encourage you're going to get much more candid discussion if you're not essentially videoing this. And you can tell that they were constantly looking at the camera. And I think they were very guarded in what they were saying. And I think it just, and so theoretically they're saying, he wasn't very candid with you. Well, I answered you probably pretty well on Danville, but because they don't want to necessarily know who they're competing. They want to know who they're competing. They don't want other people thinking they're competing. Yeah. So I would really encourage you to consult with your attorney to find out what you actually have to do. I wouldn't make this a public process. I really wouldn't. There's things to make public and there's things not. Selecting your professional services is not one of them. Having the master planning process is absolutely one of them. And so I think you want to, because you're trying to get the best consultant. And if some of these guys know it's a public process, some of them may not be, some of them may not even want to participate, or else they're not going to be as candid with you.
And what I certainly would be today was just a presentation. If we're a presentation, it would be different than, like you said, the bidding website, because it should be not.
And just to add to that, that's why I said that, is because this has been made to be open.
I know. That's why I think they ought to reconsider that.
Right. So either we reconsider that it's open, public, and allows for that type of situation, or if you want there to be more private discussion, then you wouldn't have to require them to resubmit. But if we're going to allow it to be open and everyone has the ability to see and read all of the qualifications and what they can bring to the table, you have to allow for everyone to submit at one time.
And that's what I would discourage you from doing.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, man. I think this is, like I said, I think it's good we have some leadership in the county back to help us guide through how to do these things. And I think I think what you said is, if we can do this in closed session, not have them resubmit, and then we could, if we wanted to get all for them to come back, if they felt like, they weren't able to be candid with us, we could say, hey, if you want to come back in closed session, then we would welcome you to come back. And if you want to say anything else to us, it's not public. And then we could, we could reach out to the firms that have already submitted the 3, and then we could pick a date to do them in closed session if that's something
And
that.
I completely agree with Tamika. We've set it up right now to be a public process.
That's right.
If you were gonna change it, you just need to let all the parties know and probably advertise or something. Just let people know what process you're following.
So-
But most of these guys are not used to coming and presenting this stuff publicly.
Right.
This,
The clarify things, we need to go through the procedure with the boards first, come through and make these requests, so the board will know something about it. This is a committee, it's a part of the board of supervisors, so things are different privately than they are publicly, okay? What you have to do with this process first is come through the board, so the board can go through the proper procedure before making that request. Because it would look like that the board was doing something that they know was not according to law. Okay? So the next time that we do it, this is only a committee. Okay? So the next time, get approval from the board to bring it possible. You understand what?
Yeah, so ultimately, this board will just recommend.
Right.
To the
The
board.
committee will.
Yeah,
To the board.
So we will recommend it to the board, and the board ultimately make a final decision.
Yeah, we don't want to make the decision on who to use. I mean, ultimately, we would make
The
a.
process. That's all.
Yeah, we would interview these people and say, hey, this is who we think. But if the board feels differently, they can do whatever they want. We're just, like I said, we're just committing.
Just basically the process. Make sure after you make these decisions like we did last meeting, come to the board first before you send out any type of request out. And that way, we'll be able to go through the proper process. It didn't come through the board properly. That's all.
So you want us?
Then it was the
I mean, I think the book with I mean, we did send.
No, the committee.
Yeah, I don't know. Y'all over out, but we.
It's come through that something. Yeah. So we can go through.
the RFC.
It's an RFQ, right?
RFQ.
RFQ.
Anything to, because this committee is just a part
Right.
of the court.
So we come to you saying we want to do the
Right.
RFQ. We're
Then-
just yes,
then we'll
and it
take
gets
it
put out.
So before we send it out again, you want us to say that we want to send out the RFQ.
Right. And then we would have gotten an advice from Ms. Morgan, through proper procedure through the board. See, what happened is the thing was sent out by this committee. It's just a matter of procedure, okay? Just one little glitch that was missed. It has to come through the board, so they will go through the proper processes as Matt said. So we will make sure that we're doing things properly, so these people wouldn't feel uncomfortable like they did. Because they know the process, they've been through it, and they experience. That's why he pointed to the camera when they were talking, because he knew they really, if it were a bidding process, the camera wouldn't have been in there. Because it's a contract with services from them, professional service. That made it look like it was a bidding process.
So, Mr. Clay, what I'm hearing, we need to report to the board.
Yes, sir. Because
I'm hearing,
we're just a committee.
and asking permission to either hear from these.
No, not for permission, let me give a request to the board and then let's take it through proper process. Make sure this doesn't happen.
You want to
We
request
just said
the
we had
RFQ.
to, in other words, somebody made a request before they went through the board. Or you just the committee's part of the board. So we want to make sure that's possible. Okay. There's nothing wrong, but it's a learning process.
So the chairs need to bring it to you,
Yeah.
so you can bring it to the board, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what they need to do and make sure that everything's posted.
Yeah.
And then it will go to. So that's the chair need to go here.
Right.
And then to the board. Okay.
Just a matter of
I think that that would have been avoided. I don't think that there was a meeting prior to this being submitted. So I think that that's just the time and piece. Whereas when we got together earlier or last month or whenever we got together, there had not been a meeting where there was, and I don't know if the former county administrator was there and it was agreed upon. But I think that there's just gonna disconnect. So that's it.
Just we know what I have to.
Uh,
I guess that's what we're next time.
I have no idea.
No, but say,
I'd like to go back to the post session and however that needs to happen. I would like to get it on the county's agenda.
well, that's the way. Well, it sounds to me that we need a report to the county administrator to put on the agenda a report from the strategic planning and small committee to allow bidding whatever from these vendors to allow us to listen to RFQs or make us and bring a report back to the board.
And, and just a point of clarification, we're not allowing for any bidding at this point because we're not discussing any amount. Because again, as stated, what we want is their qualifications, and you're going to go with, or your intent would be to go with whomever you feel is the best qualified for the job and to do what the county intends for this part.
That's my point. I would think the county should that to anybody today, because it wasn't a bidding war. It was just providing your qualifications to provide us the service. Yeah, but I know the camera was a distraction, but I don't think that.
I think it became a distraction though.
I think around that question,
So keep in mind, they're sharing proprietary information.
Yes.
And they're sharing their competitive advantage. They don't want their competition to know what their competitive advantage is. So that's typically why they don't want to. But you could do it. You could do it in a way where you do an RFP. If you knew generally what process you want to follow, like you want the consultant to come in and lead a public process and develop a master plan and prepare construction, whatever scope you want to do, you could just advertise it as that. Still could be a closed session, and they would attach prices to it.
Okay.
So you can do it however you want. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of what you want to. And actually, when they submit a price, when they come in, you're evaluating qualifications and price. So you could do it. You can do it either way.
So Ms. Morgan, tell us what you want us.
Oh wow.
You're going back and forth.
I think, what I was going to say earlier was in regards to the RFQ. Now, technically, have all of at least whatever they have shared with you in regards to the qualifications. And then, so you have that for all of the entities who have already submitted. So then if you want to pair that with, if you want to do an RFP and you want to get those prices to move forward. But again, when it comes to professional services, you just can't go on price alone. So that's why it's always better to do the RFQ when you're looking for someone who's qualified to do something as specific as this. And I believe that one of the reasons why we issued it as an RFQ again was one, timing, because we wanted to be conscious of the timing factor, as well as we wanted to go ahead and make sure that we were consistent across the board. I'm going to have to ask the board, the committee in itself, your thoughts in regards to timing, because I know there was one that said, we can get started fairly quickly. It would be 2028. And because this is only my second committee meeting, I don't know strategically like the time frame or anything. I came in at the last meeting and it was like, okay, this RFQ has been out. I don't know the strategic where we are with this. I know that there was a survey that went out. I know that the RFQ, but in regards to time frame or in regards to even costs that we thought maybe, because you still have to go in with a ballpark figure of, we know that there is funding for this or funding for that. Yes, we want them to help us with funding, but we've got to know what we're bringing to the table too. And those are just not the questions that I haven't heard answered in these two meetings. So I can't tell you, let's go and move forward with anything at this point. Because one, I don't know how we're going to pay for it. And that's always in the back of my mind because that's my background. And two, I don't know in regards to the counties, what you've been directed from the board. I know that, Supervisor Smart brought it up, but it was like he brought it up and now we're running full fledged towards getting Edmonds Park ready. And that's not That's not how I operate. And so I don't know the background. So I would have to defer to the committee to bring me up to speed on what's needed and where we would go from here.
So I mean, I'll give it. So this is where we were. So my goal was to get the RFQs, find out who was the most qualified person to do the job, because we don't know exactly 100% what we want in the park to give them. It's going to cost $30 million, whatever. I don't know what it's going to cost. So my goal was to cost outside, pick a firm that was the most qualified, and then we would recommend a firm to the board of supervisors, and they would work out the pricing. We only have 75,000, which is not going to cover any of the 5 that we have. So I think my goal was to pick the most qualified group and then recommend to the board of supervisors. If the board of supervisors had the funding, then great, we'll hire them. If not, we have to go to our number 2 choice and see if we can work out a deal with them. But I didn't want to get this committee pulled into pricing because we don't. We have survey results, but we want them to lead a community effort to finalize what we actually want in the park. And we want to reach out to Stanton River State Park and the towns and see what are you doing so we don't duplicate effort. So I don't have a time frame in mind at all. I want to do it correctly and work with everybody. I think my only goal was to pick the most qualified firm. This board recommend it to the board of supervisors, and the board of supervisors can try to work out a financial deal to how much it would cost for their services. Because usually, at least in my line of work, you hire an architect to get them to tell you how much it's going to cost to build whatever. And then after that, you go and ask for approval for the capital money that is required based off of the architect's drawings. And sometimes we'll go get budgetary items from a construction company or whatever, but we always hire architects first based off their qualifications. Then they tell us how much it's going to potentially cost based off what we want. And then at that point, then we try to get the funding for grants with my line of work, we just ask for the funding from the corporate, group. But I think from this standpoint, you would have to say, hey, we want to hire this architect based off the qualifications. So the county was able to discuss what they wanted. Then after that, after we hire them, we go into the community aspect where we work with different groups and figure out what we want. And then the architect can help us price this. And then we go to the board and say it's going to cost X amount of dollars at this park. Is there funding available? Yes. Move forward. No. Do we want to go try to get that funding, raise the money, or go after grants? Or do we pare down what we're asking for? Well, the third step would be, do we do it in phases where you do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 if you can't afford it? But I think the only thing I wanted to do is just we cannot do this on our own, but find a landscape architectural group we feel comfortable with and then recommend them to the board. And they can negotiate a contract with them based off the funding available. And if the board comes back and says, we don't have funding right now to hire a landscape architecture company, I think this board just pauses until funding's available because there's no use for us to continue to meet if there's no money to hire a firm. We're not going to design this park ourselves.
Well, there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. You're fine. And don't want to get you excited about it.
Excited.
But there's a difference between private sector and public sector. With the public sector, you're a committee formulated by the board of supervisors. Okay, so anything that comes out of those meetings before you go private has to come through the board. It's just certified. You're doing a good job, and there's no problem. But it's just one little glitch. You're dealing with public money to public issue. So it's just one small step. Come to the board first before anything goes on. And then we'll be able to tell you about the laws that you're dealing with. You're doing a good job. Let's keep moving forward. But next time, in terms of trying to make it simple, just come to the board first and we all work together in terms of normal proper protocol and laws and relations. Keep doing it. Okay.
So I think my biggest question, I just thought last time we agreed on the path forward, but I'm glad we have this new information. So what I need now is, what do you want? If this board, how do you all feel? I feel like we should do what Matt is recommending. However, the laws are to do that, we would need to ask the board. So, what do we need to ask the board?
You need to go with your guidance. With your guidance.
Yes.
So,
well,
to go to the board of supervisors, but it needs to go to me. It needs to go through you.
No,
Because
it's a committee formulated. Will you correct that a little bit?
So what I was what I was going to add is that you know, whenever I share anything with the board,
Right.
what I am going to need to share with them is from the committee standpoint.
Okay, so there you have it. And you see it abruptly ended. There was about 10 more minutes, but this went on so long that my SD card ran out. They completely filled up 32 gigs. So the first thing I did when I left this meeting was I went straight to Walmart and bought 128 gig. So that will never happen again because this just went back and forth more and more. And you can see what Kleber's trying to say is that they shouldn't have made anything public. They should have gone through the board first because there's a public sector and a private sector. I think if I had not been there, none of this conversation would have happened. I think it was the fact that there was a camera in the room is what made this, because it made the board look inefficient. So, you know, I could be wrong. Tell me what you think. I really hate that I missed that last 7 or 8 minutes because that was quite significant to me. And I think people left that meeting with a bad taste in their mouth. So they're going to reconvene in January. There's going to be a upheaval in the Board of Supervisors in the meantime. And I think it's really cool you get to see some ideas from these companies about what they can do with Edmonds Park. I was really excited. I mean, come on, splash pools, swimming pools, hiking trails, courts for, you know, they had a ribbon cutting for the pickleball court and I missed it. I thought it was yesterday, but it was the day before. So I'd really like to cover those things. And I've added a lot of new events to the website, so please check it out. And anybody out there with anything going on, just let me know. Just email me. All the information's on our website. Yeah, so there you go. There's your tax dollars at work. All right. Have a good week. Be nice to each other and enjoy yourself.